For me, Superman is the best fictional character there is. He's someone we can look up to, but also relate to, even though he's the most powerful being on Earth, or in the universe. Having said that, he's maybe not the easiest character to get into, and nowhere to start based on 80 years worth of history can be pretty daunting for new or old comic readers. So in this video, let's try and help you out. Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster and made his debut in Action Comics issue 1 way back in 1938. Although back then he couldn't fly, but rather leapt tall buildings in a single bound, he was still very strong, but not quite as invulnerable as today. He still, however, stood for truth, justice, and all that fun stuff. His early adventures are not the best place to start for a new reader, partly because you need a small fortune and a lot of luck to track down all the issues, but also because they are very much a product of their time. Even jumping forward several decades into the 60s isn't the greatest idea, purely because the stories are just so bizarre and out there. Then you have the soft relaunches, with an example being from the late 90s where Superman's powers were changed to be electric in nature and splitting them into two, to a blue and red version. That, dear viewers, was a long year for me, and not a story I recommend you start with. Personally, my Superman collection starts in 1986. The reason for this is due to the universe-altering event that was Crisis on Infinite Earths, the event that shook the DC Universe to the core and set the stage for creators to be able to start afresh with a more streamlined approach. On board came John Byrne, who jumped ship from Marvel after a hugely successful runs on the X-Men and Fantastic Four. He was given the keys to the Superman Kingdom and was allowed to shape things and start afresh. To do this, he wrote and drew a 6-issue miniseries called Man of Steel to set the stage, then relaunched Action Comics, changed the name of the previous Superman title to Adventures of Superman, and started a brand new Superman comic, starting with a fresh issue 1. While this is the perfect jumping on point in story terms, it does mean to bring yourself up to date you need to read 30 plus years of Superman comics, which is no easy feat, even if you have plenty of free time and plenty of spare change. There are, however, some significant stories from the 90s, with one being a must-read for any Superman fan, new or old, and that's the death of Superman. In 1992, DC planned to marry Lois and Clark in a huge story for them. However, at the same time the popular TV series The New Adventures of Superman, aka Lois and Clark, was being worldwide, and the creators of the show wanted to be the first to marry comics' favourite couple. This meant that Superman creators needed a new angle, so they decided the only route was to kill off the Man of Steel. During a multi-issue battle with a newly created monster called Doomsday, Superman lost his life and didn't return for about a year. During his time of rest, we were treated to 4 imposter Supermen in Cyborg, the Eradicator, Superboy and Steel. Now this video isn't a spoiler video, so I urge you to read the death of Superman's story and then follow it up with the reign of the Supermen. It's a great way to meet many of the supporting cast and to read one of the biggest stories in comics. Due to the success of the Man of Steel miniseries mentioned earlier, DC have let creators have their own stab at refreshing the Superman origin, which is given a series such as Birthright and Secret Origin, both of which are well worth your time, especially if you want to learn more about the early days of the Man of Steel. In more recent years, we had the DC-wide revamp called The New 52, which didn't quite click for new or old fans of their much-loved characters. This leaves us pretty much up to date with the softer reboot of the DC Comics line with Rebirth, which brought back many of the stories and characters that people love from the past. One character that really benefited from this was Superman, who was treated to some of the best stories in comics since the 80s and 90s heyday. We've had the comic milestone of Action Comics 1000 hitting stats, which featured the first work on the character from Brian Michael Bendis, who much like Byrne in the 80s jumped ship from a hugely successful run with Marvel Comics to work on Superman, even going as far as to start with his own miniseries, funnily enough, called Man of Steel. The work by Bendis is probably the easiest and cheapest way to start a new Superman collection, as all the issues are still widely available, not to mention excellent reads. All this isn't to say you have to buy large runs of Superman comics to see why he's such a great and important character. There's been several one-off issues over the years that are just as important to read than the longer multi-comic spanning tales. Superman Annual 11 by the Watchmen team of Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons is an excellent story, which comes from a time where you didn't really get many serious tales such as this featuring Big Blue. Action Comics issue 775 is a tale of why Superman is still so important in the modern era, where many comic fans see him as a relic of the 40s and doesn't really have a place. This issue tells you why that opinion is wrong. Then you have my favourite single issue of a comic ever, which is Adventures of Superman issue 505. This issue comes directly after Superman is brought back to life, and is just a fun, simple tale which shows the humanity of the character, and it's just a joyous read. If none of what I've said still doesn't tempt you to read Superman, why not try one of his many Elseworlds tales, which are stories featuring familiar concepts and characters but with a major twist, such as what if Baby Kal-El's rocket landed in Gotham and he became Batman, or if it landed in Russia and what differences being brought up in Russian soil compared to the States might mean to the character. Even if you don't fancy reading Superman stories but you still want to get into the character, there are plenty of movies and TV shows for you to binge. The original Richard Donner Superman movie from 1978 featuring Christopher Reeve is still highly regarded as one of the best superhero movies of all time, and comes from a time where they weren't really the norm like today. Man of Steel from 2013 is my favourite piece of live action Superman media to date, although I know that's often debated. It's however the first time we've really seen Superman cut loose on screen, with Henry Cavill portraying the title role amazingly. So there you have it. Hopefully this has helped you find a place to start with Superman, and hopefully you end up leveling him just as much as I do. Please comment below with your favourite Superman stories, and be sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more videos. All it leaves me to say is, up, up, and away!